Okay, now you can be very proud. You are all masters of the Herodian dynasty and you know all the ins and outs of the government of Roman Judea. Now let me add one piece to the puzzle so you can get good and confused, and that is a complete list of the Roman governors of Judea. The slide here has a list of all of them. You, of course, don't care about most of them. We know these from other Roman sources, but you will care about a few of them, and so I just want to call them to your attention. They are in bold on the slide. First is Pontius Pilate. By the way, that is not his name. Pilatus is not a name. Pilatus would be a nickname, probably having to do with a pilus is a Roman spear. And so Pilatus would be a spear chucker. So literally he's spear chucker. Pontius the spear chucker. A Pilatus then either belonged to a contingent of soldiers who were particularly good at throwing spears, or his family was known for being spear chucker, or maybe he himself. We just don't know. I should also tell you this. The job in the Roman government of being prefect or procurator of Judea is not a good job. You have to do something wrong to get that job. This is like being a general stationed in Nome, Alaska. This is not a place where people want to be. It is a difficult place to rule. It is a very un-Roman place for people who are used to Italy. It is a very uncomfortable position. And so the people who hold this position are maybe the most important people in the province, but when it comes to a larger Roman perspective, there's probably something wrong in their record to get this particular posting. Pontius Pilate was Roman prefect from 26 to 36. The other two now procurators that you will want to know are Marcus Antonius Felix, whose dates are 52 to 59, and Porcius Festus, whose dates are 59 to 61. The reason you'll want to know about those two is because they are two governors towards the end of the book of Acts, and Paul has hearings before both of these particular governors. I also have on this slide a very interesting piece of archaeological evidence, and I would like to introduce it to you. It's a dedicatory inscription that was found near the theater in Caesarea. Caesarea is where the prefects and procurators would have lived. Herod built a palace for him and his family there, but when they're not there, these Roman prefects and procurators are living there. This particular, if you look at the stone, I will go through the lettering briefly. The first line is missing a T at the beginning, but after that you can read it. It says the missing T, then I-B-E-R-I-E-U-M, literally Tiberium. Tiberius is the name of the Roman emperor. That UM ending tells us that it's a thing. So a thing, probably a building or a courtyard, was built there. Maybe the theater, was built there in honor of the Roman Emperor Tiberius. The next line is going to tell us who built it, or who paid for it, or who commissioned it. We are again, with the break on the stone, missing most of the left, but we can pick up with the end of one name with the US, a good Latin ending. And then the next word says P-I-L-A-T-U-S. Pilatus. This is Pontius Pilatus. So what this is saying is Pontius Pilatus built or commissioned or paid for something, a building, in this area, and it's dedicated to Tiberius. So this is very important archaeological evidence, which essentially says Pilate was here. And it's a very nice confirmation of what, of course, we read in the New Testament. Now I'd like to follow up with what happened after this time of the procurators. As I mentioned earlier, in the year 66, under the leadership of the Zealots, there was a very large-scale revolt that took place in Jerusalem. It lasted from 66 to 73. This is during the Pax Augusta. This is one of the few blots on the Roman record during this extraordinary period of peace, and needless to say, the Romans want to put down this rebellion. Initially, the Romans sent Vespasian in. He dealt with the north. He left his son behind. As I mentioned before, Tiberius, who will later become emperor, besieged, ultimately sacked Jerusalem, and destroyed the temple. After that time, Titus himself went back to Rome, but the Jewish zealots made a sort of last stand, if you will, at a plateau, a fortified plateau down by the Dead Sea called Masada. They'll hold out against Roman war machine for 3 years at Masada until ultimately Masada is taken. We know a lot about this Jewish revolt because of Josephus, whom I already mentioned, and the Jewish war that he wrote about this whole period. Josephus would be a younger contemporary of Jesus, so anything that Josephus writes is of importance for us in helping to understand Judaism in that period, and at least his perspective on that world and that war, etc. He also tells us a lot about the Herods. When the Romans took Masada, it took them a long time because Masada could only be approached by a narrow, winding, they call the snake path. And so the Romans had a real hard time being able to attack this high plateau. Ultimately, the Romans built a siege ramp, extraordinary piece of work, and I'll show a picture of it in a minute. But when the Romans built the siege ramp, after 3 years, they finally brought up a battering ram, and they were ready to take Masada. Morning came, they drew up their battering ram, they broke down the walls, expecting a great battle at the wall, and instead they were greeted by an eerie silence. As they entered Masada, they started looking around, and they found in different areas, lying side by side, men, women, children, Jewish rebels against the Roman Empire. They had all killed one another rather than submit to Roman authority. According to Josephus, one woman and a handful of children were all that survived, only because they hid out. While the rest were killing one another, only they survived to tell the story. To this day, Masada is sort of a symbol of Jewish resistance. The Romans, one might ask, why? Why did the Romans spend 3 years besieging Masada? Why spend all that time and effort trying to subdue 960 people? The message was clear throughout the Roman Empire. The Romans want everybody to know, do not mess with the Pax Augusta. We will do anything to preserve the peace, even if it takes 3 years, even if we have to build a ramp. The Romans proclaimed their victory. They set up, Titus did, a victory arch over the entrance to the Roman Forum. Every Roman going into the Forum would look and see this victory arch, big white victory arch that says, we did it. We put down the rebellion. We restored the Pax Augusta. They issued coins, the newspaper of the ancient world, and on the coins it said Judea Capta. They showed a picture of the victorious Titus standing in authority over a mourning personification of the people of Israel in a palm tree. The point was clear to everybody in the Roman Empire: do not mess with the Pax Augusta. And everybody in the Roman Empire got the message except one group, the Jews, who rebelled again in the year 132 under the leader of a man named Bar Kokhba, one who some thought was the Messiah. The Bar Kokhba revolt lasted 132 to 135. We don't know a lot about the Bar Kokhba rebellion, but what we do know is that it was a rather hard-fought series of battles. We do know that a lot of fighting took place around places like Herodion. We do know that the last rebels holed up in caves not far from Masada near the Dead Sea. One in particular, the Cave of Letters, was a place of of refuge for those last rebels against the Roman Empire. The Romans found them, ultimately probably starved them out. And when the Bar Kokhba rebellion was done, the Romans at this point took the step of exiling Jews from Israel. This is the so-called Great Diaspora, the Romans kicking Jews out of Israel for the future. So, and by the way, of course, they will not return, at least in large numbers, until the formation of the modern state of Israel.